Lena walked into the community hall with quiet steps, trying not to draw attention to herself. She held her small bag close to her chest and looked around slowly. The hall was crowded, brighter than she expected, filled with people talking, laughing, and tuning their instruments. It was a local talent evening, something the town arranged once a year. Anyone could perform, and everyone was welcome. But even though it was supposed to be friendly and open to all, the atmosphere had an unspoken competition in the air. People glanced at each other, trying to guess who might win. Lena had come alone. She didn't know anyone here, and she didn't come to show off or win anything. She only wanted to gather the courage to play in front of people for the first time in her life. Her heart felt heavy, but her dream felt heavier. She told herself again and again that if she didn't try today, she might never try again. The moment she walked toward the registration desk, she could feel eyes on her. Some were curious, some uninterested, and some looked at her the way people look at someone who seems out of place. Lena's clothes were simple, her hair tied back plainly, and she didn't look like someone who had years of music training. She looked like a girl who had walked in from the street, hoping to try her luck. The volunteers at the desk smiled politely and wrote her name on the list without asking many questions. After registering, she stood in a corner of the hall watching others prepare. Some carried expensive violins in cases that looked newer than anything she owned. Others warmed up their voices, singing notes confidently. A few practiced dance steps, moving with skill and ease. Everyone seemed sure of themselves. Everyone seemed like they belonged here. Lena touched her fingers gently, trying to calm her nerves. She was here only to play one song on the piano. Just one. But that one song felt larger than anything she had done before. As the event started, people found seats. The host, a cheerful man with a microphone, welcomed everyone and introduced the first performer. One by one, people showcased their talents. Some performances were beautiful, some were funny, and some were a bit shaky but still full of heart. The audience clapped for everyone. Though the claps grew louder when someone performed exceptionally well, Lena watched every performer carefully, admiring their courage. She whispered to herself, "If they can do it, maybe I can too." But she didn't fully believe it yet. When it was almost her turn, she felt her palms sweating. She wiped them on her clothes and breathed deeply. But no matter how deeply she breathed, her heartbeat didn't slow down. The host called her name, smiling kindly, and gestured toward the stage. Lena took a small step forward, then another, until she reached the stairs leading up to the stage. The lights felt too bright. The hall suddenly felt too big. As she walked toward the piano placed in the center, she could hear soft whispers from the crowd. A few people tilted their heads, curious. Some looked at her with polite boredom. And a small group of teenagers near the back smirked, nudging each other as if already expecting her to fail. One of them whispered just loud enough for a few people to hear, "She looks scared." "This will be interesting." Another chuckled, "Watch, she pressed the wrong key first." Lena heard them, though she pretended she didn't. She wasn't angry, just nervous. She knew she didn't look impressive. She didn't look like someone who could shock a crowd. She looked like a girl who wandered into the wrong place. She sat at the piano slowly, adjusting the bench so it felt comfortable. She placed her hands gently on her lap, gathering the courage that felt scattered inside her. The piano looked beautiful, polished, and well cared for. She had never practiced on a piano this nice. Her own instrument at home was an old, cracked keyboard with faded keys, donated by a kind neighbor years ago. She remembered the first time she touched that keyboard and the feeling of magic it gave her. That same feeling flickered inside her now, trying to wake her courage. The hall grew quiet, but not the respectful kind of quiet. It was a quiet filled with expectation, some hoping to be impressed, others expecting nothing at all. Lena took one last deep breath. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her mind settle. She reminded herself why she came. She didn't come to impress anyone. She didn't come to prove anything. She came because music was the one thing that made her feel alive, the one thing that never left her side during difficult days. When she opened her eyes, she lifted her hands and placed them on the keys. Her fingers trembled slightly. She knew many people were waiting for her to hit a weak, shaky note. She could almost feel their smirks even without looking up, but instead of letting fear control her hands, she allowed her heart to guide them. Her first note rang through the hall strong, clear, and full of soul. The sound echoed beautifully, filling the space with a depth no one expected from a girl who walked in quietly and nervously. That one note alone made several people blink in surprise. The teenagers who had been smirking stopped mid-whisper. No one expected that sound. Not from her. Lena didn't look at the audience. She focused only on the keys, letting her hands move the way they always did when she played alone at home. The melody began to grow, shaping itself into something warm and powerful. Her fingers glided smoothly, confidently, as if they had always belonged here. The audience felt the shift immediately. Some people leaned forward in their seats. Others exchanged surprised looks. Even the host stood backstage with wide eyes. Unable to believe what he was hearing, a woman in the front row whispered quietly, "Where did she learn to play like this?" Another replied softly, "She doesn't look like someone who took lessons." But listen to her. The room that had moments ago been filled with doubtful energy now felt completely different. The smirks disappeared. The whispers stopped. Every pair of eyes focused on her. Drawn to the unexpected beauty flowing from her hands, Lena played with emotion that felt too deep for someone her age. Her expression softened, her shoulders relaxed, and her breathing steadied. The music carried her, almost lifting her out of her fear. Each note she played seemed to tell a piece of her story, her struggles, her quiet dreams, her long nights of practice, and her hope that people could feel it even if they didn't know her personally. As the melody filled the hall, something unforgettable happened. The audience didn't just hear her music, they felt it. They felt the honesty in it, the raw emotion she poured into each sound. Some listeners even felt a lump in their throat because the music touched something inside them. The teenagers who had laughed earlier now watched with round eyes, unable to believe how wrong they had been. One of them whispered, almost in shame, "She's amazing." But no one teased him back. They were too focused on the performance. Lena continued playing, her hands moving faster now, dancing across the keys with skill and confidence. The music rose and fell like a gentle story, carrying the listeners through moments of softness and moments of intensity. Every note seemed to land perfectly, like footprints on untouched snow. As she played, her confidence grew quietly inside her. She didn't need applause. She didn't need approval. She only needed this moment, the moment where she finally allowed herself to be seen for who she truly was, not how she appeared. When she reached the final part of her piece, she slowed down gently, letting the last few notes drift lightly through the air like feathers. And when the final note echoed softly into silence, the room didn't react immediately. It was completely still, silent, not with boredom, but with awe. For a moment, the entire hall forgot to breathe, and then something remarkable happened. For a long moment after Lena played her final note, the entire hall remained completely silent. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel empty. It felt full of shock, full of emotion, full of respect that no one expected to feel when she first sat at the piano. People looked around at each other as if waiting for someone to start clapping. Even the teenagers who had smirked earlier didn't move at all. They were frozen, trying to understand how someone who looked so nervous and ordinary had just delivered one of the most powerful performances of the night. Then, slowly, one person in the front row raised their hands and started clapping. The sound echoed through the hall. Another person joined, then another. Within seconds, the entire room burst into applause, loud, warm, and completely sincere. Some people even stood up from their seats, giving her a standing ovation. Lena lifted her head slightly, surprised. She didn't expect this. She had prepared herself for small, polite claps, maybe even a few disappointed looks. But this was more than she ever imagined. Her cheeks turned a little pink as she stood up from the piano bench. She gave a small bow, clutching her hands together to keep them from shaking again. But this time, they weren't shaking because of fear, they were shaking because she couldn't believe what she had just done. The host rushed onto the stage with the microphone in hand, his smile wide and excited. Even he seemed amazed. "That," he said, almost laughing in disbelief, was absolutely incredible. I think we can all agree we didn't see that coming. The audience clapped again at his words. He turned to Lena gently. Where did you learn to play like that? He asked, not in a showy way, but with genuine curiosity. Lena hesitated for a moment, not used to speaking in front of crowds. She looked down at her hands, then back at the audience. At home, she said softly, mostly by myself. A ripple of surprise passed through the room. People exchanged glances. Some raised their eyebrows. Some leaned forward, wanting to hear more. The host understood immediately that she wasn't the type to speak comfortably in long speeches, so he spoke kindly. You mean you never took proper lessons? She shook her head. No, I watched videos when I could, and I practiced every night. Sometimes late at night, when everyone was asleep. The crowd grew even more impressed. Many people had assumed she must have had years of professional training to play with such emotion. She continued, her voice steady but gentle. My family didn't have enough money for lessons, but I loved music, so I learned however I could. There was no sadness in her tone, only honesty. The audience felt that honesty. It made her performance even more meaningful. Someone in the crowd murmured, She taught herself? That's unbelievable. Another whispered, No wonder her music felt so real. It came from her heart. The host nodded slowly, moved by her story. And what made you decide to perform today? He asked. Lena took a little breath, thinking. I wanted to see if I could do it, she answered. I usually play alone, but today I wanted to know how it feels to share music with others. I wanted to be brave. Those last words touched the whole room. The applause came again, rising like a soft wave. After leaving the stage, Lena walked backstage with small steps. Her heart was still beating fast, but this time with happiness. She found a quiet corner and sat down, letting herself breathe. Everything around her still felt unreal. For a moment, she closed her eyes, trying to absorb the moment before it slipped away. As she sat there, a few performers approached her. They congratulated her warmly, some even telling her that her performance had inspired them. One person told her they felt emotional during her piece, and another said they had never heard the hall so quiet before. Lena smiled shyly at each one, grateful for their kindness. Later, the host called everyone back to the main area for the final announcements of the evening. The audience returned to their seats. Lena joined the line of performers at the side of the stage, though she still felt unsure if she belonged among them. The host talked about the event, thanked the participants, and acknowledged the hard work of the volunteers. Then he paused, looking at the group standing beside him. And now, he said warmly, I want to take a moment to appreciate someone who surprised all of us today. The crowd immediately knew who he meant. Every head turned toward Lena. She felt her heart jump. The host gestured for her to step forward. She did, slowly. The lights felt brighter again, but this time they didn't scare her. She felt a quiet strength inside her, something she had never felt before. Lena, the host said with a proud smile, you reminded all of us that talent doesn't always come wrapped in shiny clothes or confident smiles. Sometimes it comes quietly. Sometimes it walks in alone, hoping not to be noticed. But once it shows itself, it leaves everyone amazed. The audience clapped once more. Some people nodded, agreeing with every word. You played from your heart, the host continued. And we felt it. You didn't just play music, you shared a part of your story without saying anything. That is what makes a true artist. Lena felt warmth in her chest. For so long she had kept her music hidden. For so long she believed people would laugh or judge her. But tonight she discovered something new, that her music could give something to others, that it could touch hearts, that it mattered. After the event ended, people slowly began leaving the hall. Several audience members approached her one by one, telling her how much they enjoyed her performance. A woman told her she was deeply moved. A man clapped her shoulder lightly and said, You have a gift. Don't hide it anymore. Even the teenagers who had smirked earlier came up to her awkward and shy now. They apologized for underestimating her. One of them said, We thought you were nervous. We didn't know you were hiding something amazing. Lena simply nodded with a small smile. She didn't hold any anger. She knew they had learned something tonight too, not just about her, but about judging people too quickly. As she stepped outside the hall, the night air felt cool and peaceful. The sky above was clear, dotted with soft, distant stars. She took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill her lungs. Her mind replayed the entire evening, the fear, the whispers, the smirks, the music, the applause. It all felt like a dream she had finally dared to live. Lena walked slowly down the quiet street, feeling lighter with each step. She realized something important. The moment she pressed that first note, she didn't just play music, she opened a door within herself. A door she had kept closed for too long out of fear. Now that the door was open, she didn't want to close it again. At home, when she entered her small room, she saw her old keyboard in the corner. The keys were faded, the frame a bit cracked, but it still held the memories of every long night she had spent practicing. She sat in front of it, touching the keys gently. Tonight had changed something inside her. She wasn't the same girl who walked nervously into the hall. She was someone who had been brave enough to share her music, someone who had been heard, someone who had been seen. As she played a soft melody on her old keyboard, she felt calm. She didn't need a big award. She didn't need recognition. She only needed this feeling, the feeling that her passion mattered, that it could reach people, that it could speak without words. And for the first time, Lena imagined a future where she continued performing, maybe at more local events, maybe at bigger stages, maybe teaching others one day. Whatever path she chose, she knew she would not be hiding anymore. Her music had found its voice tonight. And so had she.